Dr. Rachel Headley, CEO of Rose Group International. I'm really thrilled to be here with Wise Space at York University in Toronto to talk about how to lead with empathy during social distancing. It's super hard right now, let's be honest. Like my company specializes in supporting, leading teams and worrying about team dynamics through chaos and looking at chaos tolerance and order tolerance and how to support people. And this is like the biggest chaos, right? With COVID-19 and starting a couple weeks ago. And so I was really excited that my GM found like 4-year-old hand sanitizer while we were cleaning up the office. So we feel like we are in good shape. I'm really glad you're here. And first of all, let me just say that it is insane right now. And all the crazy stress and anxiety that you're having, that you're worried about your people having, I think all of that is really, just know that that's expected, of course, but no matter what kind of change you're going through, there are predictable ways to understand what's going to happen. And there are practical and tactical ways that you can support your people and yourself. And I want to share how we think about that for you today, because I think what we all want is some kind of structure, some kind of thing that we can do to make things better. And there's just not that many things like that. So I want to share with you some of those strategies, what's crazy making for people, how you might be making other people crazy by accident, and how you can make that all better. So let me share my screen. And let's see, I'll put share. I think I've got it all set up right. So let me just do that. Here we go. All the Zoom things. Here we go. I'm going to make sure that I have active speaker. Perfect. Okay. So how to lead with empathy during social distancing. That's why we're here. All right. Oh, no, didn't have the right thing. Oh, no, don't want that. All right, we'll try. It's a little testy because I can't. Okay, there we go. So what we do is we look at chaos and how people react to chaos. Now, we don't mean chaos like drama necessarily, although certainly COVID-19 has been dramatic. So what happens with us is on the left-hand side of this image, we see COVID-19 sneaking up on us. We're like none the wiser, and then we get jumped. And you can just tell it's like, oh God, no, oh God, now what? In real life, when I normally talk about this image pair in context, is it has a lot to do with, here you see chaos on the left and of the two men, and on the right you see order, right? He's like he's got double-breasted suit, he looks very fancy, he's got the pocket square that matches the tie, right? Like very order tolerant, what we would call order tolerant. So what's really important is that to understand that even though everyone's sort of taken aback right now, there are some of us, and maybe some on this call, because there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs on this call, we're already trying to pivot, like, okay, now what's happening, or what's the next thing, or how do we do it? So here's the magic, is that, again, it's predictable. It's predictable if you know who your people are. So the very first thing we want to talk about is who your people are. And once we understand who your people are, then we can understand much better how to create an environment that they can thrive, right? Because we've taken a work environment where everyone understands the rules, and we've sent everybody home. And a lot of leaders think, well, everyone's situation at home is different. We're just going to let them figure it out, what's best for them. That's a mistake, because most people want more structure. They want you to tell them what you expect and how you think the right thing is. Now, that doesn't mean that they might not be able to do it or whatever, but I think the most important thing is that I'm just going to say this now, and I'm going to say it lots. More communication, more structure, always better. Now, I'm going to talk about, there are some chaotic people out there who don't like structure, but at this point, more structure is better. So I use heart and brain in this because I wanted to bring a smile to your face and understand and make sure you're understanding that this is a typical tension between people, even amongst ourselves, right? So in this case, we have the brain that says, you know, the key in life, success in life is having a plan. And of course, then life ruins the plan. And so the most important thing about that is that these also sort of illustrate these two different types, right? We have some people that really need a plan. You need a plan to be successful. And some of us are like, listen, plans just get in the way of being adaptable and creative, right? And so what we can do is figure out who is who on your team. And then we have really very simple practical strategies that you can apply to make their life better. All right, so we're going to jump to the basic premise of how we look at people. Now you have to see past behavior, right? So you have to understand like that some people's behaviors, sorry, there's this really cute mom and daughter walking by with bright pink hats, and it's snowy here today. So it's fun to see people out having fun. She's jumping across our irrigation ditch, which is super cool. So we have chaos to order, and we have team to self. So think about chaos to order. So chaos at the top is people that are always looking to something new and what's the new ideas and let's chase that idea. Oh, that didn't work. Let's pivot, right? Pivot. We love the pivoting. My co-founder says that when she writes her memoir about our time together, she's going to call it an endless series of pivots or endless series of, oh, I can't think of it, but basically all over the place, right? Something like an endless series of pivots. So chaotic. I'm super chaotic. Order people like a plan. So order people are the people that want to know what's happening. Give me a story, help me understand what's going on. I don't know, like, I don't know what it means to work from home. I've never done it. I don't want to do it. I don't understand how that's going to work. Help people understand what that looks like. In a normal work environment, it would be people that are they feel like kind of the naysayers in a meeting, like you're blue hatting, right? You're whiteboarding, you're co-creating solutions, you're idea generating. And they're the person's like, what is the plan? Like, this is a great idea, but how are we actually going to pull it off? Those are order tolerant people. Now, not necessarily better or worse, just different. Okay, and we need each other, right? Desperately, we need each other because you can't have all crazy people in your office and you can't have all order tolerant people in your office. Left to right is team to self. So team-driven people love co-creating. They like being embedded in a team. We're the people that can't stand to be alone for more than like a day, maybe 2 days, maybe an hour, depending on the day. So team-driven people. More team-driven people. Self-driven people are people that want to figure things out on their own and sort of process that mentally. So I think that's the real, so one way, so we want to be thinking about where do you fit? Maybe is the first question. Where do you fit in here? And then I'm a fixer, so I'm chaos and team. So that's where I live. I love helping people. I love feeling like the hero. I love solving problems other people can't. So that's kind of how you think about this structure. And then I'll go into a little more detail about some examples. One example is that we had a fixer who was a very high performer, really incredible person on the team. She was the project manager. It's a small team, small firm, and she's a fixer. And so she loves helping people. She's checking in with everybody every day. She's keeping an eye on all the clients and the client projects. And then, so she is literally a day or two into you must work from home isolation stuff. She literally was collapsing emotionally under that. Now, she felt like, the sad part is that she felt like she must be a control freak because she felt the need to be connected. But she interpreted that to mean that she needed control. What she really needed was people. And the fun thing about that is she put sticky notes all over her desk about every person and every project, and that made her feel better. And so to me, what that told me was that just translates into she wants to be more connected to her people. It's not about control, it's about connection. And so she needs to be talking to people more. Now, her CEO is an independent, and he's fine working by himself. He's self-driven, And he was afraid that if they touched base with everyone, that people would feel micromanaged, like you weren't trusting what they were doing at home. And so it's really important to remember that everyone needs something different. So for the fixer, project manager, she was wilting underneath the idea that if you talk to people, they'll feel micromanaged. And let me tell you, most people are team driven. So she needed to talk to people all the time. And that's okay. And especially during this time, we also have retreat to our corners. And so we're all in there. So you got to get them out, get people out of your corners and working together. So it's really important to be thinking about not only what you need, because that's what we think everyone needs. It's just a default. So we have to put what we need aside and look at what other people on our team need. So for her, she needs to be talking to people. And she said, there's 2 or 3 people that really probably I need to talk to more often because they feel like they need more connection. And, and you can always tell it's the people that you video conference or call, they seem kind of down when you talk to them. By the end, and after you talk to them for a few minutes, they like perk right up and they feel engaged. That's how you can really tell that people are team driven and needing connection. So the other way but the other thing I made sure to tell her is that don't be afraid to do things for you. If you're feeling like you need connection, talk to somebody, reach out to a client, reach out to a team member, talk to the independent in the room, or not in the room, but in his room, because it's really important to be self-aware, but people don't know this about themselves. So it's really important to try to pin your people onto this graph and then understand what they need. And so we're going to walk through a little bit more about kind of the core of who these folks are in a very a little more simple way. And then we'll talk about the strategies, the next thing we'll talk about what makes them crazy, what's crazy making. And then the next thing is we'll talk about the strategies and the practical tools and the things that you can do to support them. What was I going to say about that? We literally spend days and weeks and months and sometimes years working with companies on this stuff. So just know this is like the slimiest little scum on the top of the pond. And there's lots more. We have a book and a website. We have the website link. We'll provide the website link. Maybe I'll say the words in case we don't track it in here somehow, but it's rosegroupintl.com. And so Rose Group International is a company. And that is the place you can get information and learn a little bit more about us, what we do. And then our concepts page has more about this, like what if you fall in the line and some of those sorts of questions. So, all right, we'll move on to our next example, which is our PR firm. So this is a PR firm, also small team, relatively small team, bigger than our entrepreneur teams usually. This is an entrepreneur group, a startup that is about probably 6 or 7 years old. So they're a little more mature than some of us just starting. But what you can see is the bottom right are organizers. They're self-driven. And then you have the bottom left is stabilizers. They're team-driven. So I kept this up here so you kind of see. And then the fixers are most of their people. And a lot of us in this group are going to be fixers and independent, so chaos people. So what happens is that, let's say, just as an example, Andy and Kira, we can see that they are complete opposites on the spectrum here. So what Kira will do, this is a PR firm that does like event planning, and they'll have multiple events, multiple days. And then what happens is Andy, let's say Andy's client is on stage on one of those days and he can't remember what day. So he wants to make sure he's connecting with her. So Kira will send out the 30-page run of show. It has every detail in it, every logo, the color schemes of all the people and all that. And so Andy will get an email, and instead of opening the email and reading the run of show, because it's 30 pages, who has that kind of time, he'll walk his little tail down to Kira's office, poke his head in the door and say, "Hey, Kira, what day is my client speaking on?" And he says, and Kira immediately is, all of her work is basically is not valued, right? Andy, just by asking the question, devalues all the work that she's already put in, because organizers love to have all of that detail figured out. And so if you figured that part out, then all of a sudden Andy is like, and then Kira's like, didn't you read my email? And he's like, well, yeah, I saw it come in, but that reminded me to ask you the question. So I just came down. Well, Kira also likes structure, and she doesn't like it when people poke their head in her office. And so she's like, listen, Andy, just go read the email. It's all in there. And so then Andy leaves going, that woman, she did not even answer a simple question. What is wrong with her? And so right away in a normal situation, we see that this little tiny interaction, because of how they see the world differently, means that they're really not, they can really get sort of in conflict by accident. And the important thing to remember is all of us chaos people, I'm a fixer, all of us chaos people, we need the order tolerant people. Self-driven people need team people. We need each other to do work to be successful, but that very difference makes us crazy against each other and makes a lot of tension and weird dynamics in the office unless you can address it and work through it. And so when we have something like COVID-19, which is destroying everything that we know, the structures that we know, everyone sort of retreats to the extreme of their corners. And then you have to figure out how to get them out of their corners and start working together in a way that makes sense. So that's why this is so critical to understanding what's going on right now. Here's just another quick example. This is a firm in Virginia. They have some very deep order tolerant people, but they also have mostly chaos people. And so what happened in this case is Charlie is the CEO. Charlie called and said, listen, I've told everybody that they can work from home if they want, but no one's working from home and they're bitching about not working from home. I've already told them they can go work from home. Well, what happened is he just said, go work from home. He didn't say, I want you to work from home. If you work from home, I want you to forward your phones to this number or to your mobile. I expect you to be able to do this. I want you to call into the meeting. Like, what does that actually look like? If I work from home, what does that look like for me? What are your expectations of me working from home? So even though, because he's chaos tolerant, he's all about, hey man, just figure it out. But a lot of his other people, at least 4 of his people, were like, I don't know what that means. I don't understand. I don't like change. People on the bottom half of this graph, not a big fan of change. So they needed more information. So the goal here for Charlie that I worked with him on was to create a plan. What do you want? What do you want it to look like? If they work from home, what is the plan? And it doesn't take long, 15 minutes, sketch it out on a notepad. But that difference was huge for them. So it went from everyone in the office is feeling that tension of, oh my God, I should be working from home. I shouldn't be out I should be home. I don't know why I'm out here. Like that stress. But I want to be home, but I don't know how that looks. And people don't know to articulate that that's what they're missing. People are not that self-aware about this stuff. So that's why for you as a leader, you really have to see past some of the behavior and see what's the root cause of what's going on. And that's what happened with this gentleman, Charlie. He was like, people are freaking out. And I told them to go to work and I told him to go home. And so he couldn't get past I don't understand this behavior enough to actually figure out what's going on. And so once we talked about this with him, he was really able to say, oh, he had a meeting on Friday. Everybody worked from home on Monday. No complaints. They just rolled right into it. And so that was really an important thing. And you would think that most of us that are chaos tolerant were like, well, just figure it out, man. What does it matter? Most people, we're outnumbered. Most people need more communication and more planning than you and I probably need. So that's a really important take home. So when we look at this, what do people need? So if you're a fixer, and we have a free assessment, I mean, most of us can maybe kind of guess what we are. And based on if we like craziness and people or whatever, there's kind of 2 questions we ask, would you rather be organized or adaptable? And that kind of gives you either side of that graph. And then do you like to work in a team or do you like to work on your own? It's kind of the other 2. So you can kind of get a sense. We also have a free assessment on our website. So if you want to actually find out what exactly you are for sure, you can take that assessment if you want. I'll make sure maybe I can dump it into the chat window, the link in between here. So If you're a fixer, you need a mission. You love to solve problems for people. You love to help people. You're all about helping humans. That's who you are. Independence, they need freedom. Hate rules. If this whole constraining stay-at-home order nonsense, hate it. You hate it. It's like your worst nightmare. Independents loathe rules generally. That's why there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are independents. They're true disruptors. They love change for change's sake. Stabilizers need people. They are tied into their people. Stabilizers, if they have to work from home, they will be probably on the phone all the time talking to all the people because they need that connection. They need consistent, reliable, and they need a plan, but they need consistent, reliable structure. Organizers need a reason. They're very logic driven. They're not driven by that. Some of us have this deep guilt to make sure that everyone's doing okay, and they just don't have that. They can sort of compartmentalize things a little better. They tend to be much more logic driven. So what that means so this is another funny one. So the heart is saying, well, things are great. And so all of us as leaders, we're like, I'm sure things will be fine. We'll just send people home and it'll be fine. And then, the brain's like, you should turn around and look what's happening. No, I'm not interested in turning around. So what's happening is for a lot of leaders is they're like, people will figure it out. Everyone's home life is different. Everyone's situation is different. They're just we'll just figure it out as we go. And that's really not how most people work. And so that's one of the things we're really seeing as a struggle right now, is that there's not enough planning and communication around what the plan is for people. So I just want to throw this in here really quickly. This is our 4 types, and this is how we move through change. So when you look at, we're going along normally, all of us, and then we have a change event happen. And you can see that the fixers and the independents, we start getting excited, we start seeing opportunity, but we also say, oh crap, that's not going to work. Oh, what about this? Oh, that probably won't work. Oh, try this, try that, and all those things. So you see these big swings in emotion, big swings in ideas and optimism and pessimism and all of that. What we see in an organizer is organizers and stabilizers have a long decline. They can really be in resistance, really not on board with the change. And so what we see right now is we have some people that are very order tolerant, and they don't seem to be freaking out right now. And that's because they're a little bit in denial, in the sense of they're like, well, I'm just going to go home for a couple of weeks and then I'll be right back to my office and it'll be just fine. And I think a lot of us are realizing that this will be something different. It will be something new for quite a while before we figure this whole thing out. So what we're going to see happen is, in the beginning, like last week, we saw a lot of chaos people freaking out because they couldn't get their head around what's going on, or if they were, they weren't really settled into what's going on, how to thrive at home. And what we see for organizers and stabilizers, a lot of them are like, oh, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. And then what we're going to see is in 2 weeks, when everyone starts figuring out that this is going to be a month or 2 months or 3 months or whatever it's going to turn into, they're really going to start really collapsing. Because what happens is, as these guys decline and it goes deeper and deeper, they cannot see the future. They cannot see the good in any of this. They cannot adapt to it. And so you as a leader, if you're a chaos person, you can help them get through that faster by like anchoring them in, giving them a plan, anchoring them in what the future is going to look like in your mind and why that might even be good, how we can take what we're learning now and use it later. These are the things that really are going to start showing up. Again, right now, people are pretty not going too crazy because they feel like it's only temporary. As we go on, it'll get much worse, much more intense. So as a leader, if you structure things in a way that resonates with people, this is what the change can look like. A little bit of creativity, a little bit of innovation, a little bit of interest, but everyone kind of moves through it a little closer together, a lot less swings between your people, so that you're not trying to like figure out how the hell to make all this work. So it goes from here, it goes from here to here. And that's clearly much less insane, much less or much more chill. You can manage things better. You can actually get some work done, because when you're all crazy like that all over, very little actual work will get done. And that's another thing that you need to be really thinking about. So the things that make people crazy, are the fixers, isolation and routine. We don't like routine, hate it, hate routine. We like creativity, we like new ideas and challenges. I can't have too much interaction. And if you have fixers on your team, you can't interact with them too much. And so this makes independence crazy because they don't like restrictions, they don't like plans, they like to just do their own thing. Stabilizers don't like uncertainty in all the ways. Uncertainty about team, when I'm going to see you next, what the plan's going to be. That really is crazy making to them. It cripples them, their ability to do things. Organizers, they don't like lack of logic and the oversharing. So if you have a meeting where everyone's like, tell us how you're all doing, and the organizers are like, oh man, not into it, right? They're like meetings that are all business. So, and this whole thing about, sequestering yourself, for even if your community doesn't have any incidents yet or any evidence of COVID, like organizers really struggle with this lack of logic. So if my community doesn't have any cases, why am I in my house is dumb. Like they really have a real hard, they need the logic and the reasoning behind it to make sense to them. So how can you help these people? Strategies for each person. Fixers need a lot of video check-ins. Voice is good too, but video should be your new normal, period. If you can get on Facebook Live in a closed group, which is, I know it's kind of the old, like the Gen X version of this, but it does give you a way to actually communicate that's not Zoom or whatever. Use your video check-ins all the time. And I tell leaders that be aware of your people and what they need, but also be aware of what you need. Like I had this project manager last week. She's like, well, I think I could check in with these 3 people more often because I think they're going nuts. And I said, well, how much do you need? How much check-in do you need? So don't be afraid to also be checking in with your people because that's how you work and that's what you need, because you also have to take care of yourself in this whole thing. Independence, you have to kind of keep them on track. They'll get squirrely. They'll start watching YouTube videos or TikTok and they'll go find some new thing to go do and create something on their own. And you're like, wait, come back. Wait, you don't do that. Come over here. So either give them a project to go do on their own. And so it's specific that they can kind of dig into, but they will be the person most likely on your team to like squirrel off into some, and maybe that's you, to squirrel off into some other new thing. Stabilizers, give them a plan. So one of the challenges we had with another company last week is they said, well, it's a day-to-day thing. We're going to look every day and decide if we're going to stay home or go back to work. And I said, don't do that. Because what happens is every email then I get, if I'm a stabilizer, every email I get from you is like, oh God, is this bad news? Oh no, is this bad news? Like say, next Thursday at noon, we're going to decide if we're going to stay home next week. Like have the plan, because otherwise it's a day-to-day thing for you. It feels more flexible and adaptable. To them, it feels panicky. So you want to settle them down as much as you can. You also want to give stabilizers a virtual team that meets regularly, that has a common mission, that they can connect and understand better. Because what'll happen is if you don't give them a work structure like that, they're going to connect into their personal structure. And not that that's a problem most of the time, but if you need them to get work done, they will, if they don't have a sense of stability for the work side, they will absolutely just go do family and home stuff because they need to feel like something is normal. So you need to give them something to hold on to. And then organizers, they're fine on Slack. They don't care. They're working from home. They're fine. Mostly they're just going to want to know the plan and what the strategy is, and put them in charge of figuring out how to make this stuff work. If you're a chaos person, you have an organizer on your team, have them say, listen, we're going to have 50% productivity because everyone's nuts. So can you replan our work? Can you identify for us the critical things that we need to be working on? That kind of thing. Because that's what they love to do. That's what they're great at. They're going to be fine working on their own. They don't want to be checked in with necessarily, not that much. And so they're they're kind of ideally suited for this working from home situation. They hate the rules, or they hate the chaos, but they're better at dealing with it than some other ones. So the most important thing is that a lot of us just want to be like, I don't even know how to deal with all this crazy stuff with my people. So they'll figure it out for themselves. It's not really how it works. You really have to lead with, you have to empathy, leading with empathy right now means providing practical solutions for people where they can really thrive at home in the best way possible. And then from there, then you can actually think about getting work done and understanding each other and how to, work through time. And if this thing turns out to the long haul. And the great thing about understanding this now, when this huge chaotic, all this crazy stuff happening, is that when things settle down, the beautiful thing is if you do this right now, you will create a team that when you're normal, it's going to be a rock star. Because what happens is if you go through this crucible of change and you do it well and everyone feels like they're in it together, everyone's valued, and you have this bigger mission and you're going to like really rock star it, then when things get normal, there's no problem you're going to be able to throw at these guys that they can't manage. Like, it will be awesome. Now, most of us have worked, if you've worked in corporate, most of us have figured out that big companies, big organizations, they didn't really stink at change. They just kind of say, well, we're going to all go online now and see check in with your boss or whatever. And that's really a tough way to do it for most people. So that's the fun thing about entrepreneurs, having small teams, is that you get to really create this new environment that people can love and thrive in, instead of like just really collapsing and going through that decline in a really hard way. So that's kind of all I wanted to share structurally with you. And I'm happy to take questions. I see the chat thing popping up once in a while on my other screen. So what kind of questions can I answer?
Should we go through the chat very quickly? Well,
sure.
Or
yeah.
Cool. So I see Mike. Mike has a question. So how do you analyze people to put them on the graph?
Yeah, so the things that you can think about for your people are, you can either have them answer questions, or you can, as a leader who probably knows your people pretty well, can guess, although that's always tricky because we have our own sort of blind spots about people. The two things you want to think about is on the graph, here, let me just pull that part up so we can stare at it a little longer. Okay. If the person that you're working with likes new ideas, change, here's a great example. Let's say you have a new problem to solve. An email comes in, a new client, something, or you have a new idea for a product. If you're the person that likes to run down the hall or call all your buddies or text them and say, hey, let's get together at the whiteboard and figure out what's going on, we'll all brainstorm together. Those are team people. Those people like team. They like to co-create solutions with other humans. If they're like, no, I'm just going to sit in my office and figure out what I think is best, and then I'll work with the team on kind of my ideas, then those are people who are self-driven. So that's one way to kind of figure out either that side, left to right. And then top to bottom, people that need a plan. So you hear this all the time in meetings, right? Like you'll say, okay, we're going to go do this. And someone in the room will say, yeah, how does that work with what we're already doing? Or, when do you want us to actually be done with that? Or how does this fit? Or who's involved? People that feel like they need way more planning than you, they're order tolerant people. And then the people that are like, well, we'll figure it out as we go, those are chaos people. So you can probably get a sense for your people just based on those two, like just thinking through it that way. Another funny story, like I think I'm a fixer. I'm really chaotic, pretty high up on the graph. And I was working with a stabilizer. And so if you're a fixer or if you're a chaos person, order tolerant people drive you crazy. That's another way to figure it out. And the other way. So if you're an order tolerant person, you think chaos people are squirrels and they're always chasing the new thing. And so that's another way you can kind of identify. I was working with a stabilizer and we were doing a product-based launch, and it was something that would fit in an envelope, right? Whatever. And the woman who was doing all the work, actually going to be sending things out and organizing the shipping and all that stuff, she wanted me to tell her what envelope to use. Like, don't care. Whatever works, man. You figure it out. Oh, no, she couldn't do it. She wanted me to tell her the SKU and exactly the size and all the things and how she wanted me to put them in, and do they go up this way or down this way? Where's the flap? Like, and I was like, dude, don't care. But she needed me to tell her. So that's one way to really, that's the difference. I'm a figure it out as you go, and she's a, I need data, I need information. So those are kind of anecdotal ways to figure it out. You could probably pin you and your life partner or your siblings on there pretty easily.
So I see Judy has a question, but Judy, do you just want to ask? I see you're unmuted.
Oh yeah, no, I'm taking your test right now because
awesome.
one of the things that it's funny because as you were talking, I just realized that I go back and forth between fixer and stabilizer, depending on whether I'm leading a team or not.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm an individual member, I'm a fixer. If I'm the lead of a team, I'm a stabilizer. So do you construct tactics as a blend, or do you how do you approach that?
Well, that's a great question. And really the important thing that I did mention is that we're all, we can all do anything we put our minds to, right? So we're not, to your point, we can change how we do things. And I would guess that if you're leading a team, you're still probably a fixer because you have to figure out how everyone's doing, how to support them. And you can, if there's a change, you can figure out how to make that change work, right? And so, but if you're close to the line, and a lot of people are, as you saw in that one graph, we had several people that were right on the line in the middle. And so all that means is that communicate more. I mean, so if you're a team, so you're on the team side, regardless of fixer or stabilizer. Correct. And frankly, all of us don't like total chaos. Like we all like some level of, this is the box we're playing in, right? And so the important thing is you're a team person. So no matter what is going on, you need to be talking to people all the time. And if you don't talk to people for huge periods of time, like days, that will feel awful to you. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I'm working by myself in the office today, but I'm talking to you guys. I have a similar thing later with a different group. I'm doing it tomorrow. I'm meeting a couple CEOs. And so for me, I'm still connecting. So even though it's not in person, I feel like I'm still having that human connection. And so that's what's important. So feel free to, and the trouble is that we feel like we might be bothering people if we keep talking to them, or if we reach out to them too much. Doesn't matter. People want to hear from you. They want to be talked to. And so don't be afraid to reach out as often as you feel like you need to. And then you might find a balance. Maybe you don't need to, maybe you only need a couple connections a day to feel good about where everyone is and how you're doing. Mm-hmm. It might be that you need 5, or it might be that you need 1. And sometimes I get in the mode of, I don't even want to talk to anybody. And so you kind of have to feel through it. And that's the hard part right now, is it's such a weird situation that you have to create your new normal that makes sense for you and the people you're working with.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to unmute and ask a question?
I'm trying to stop my screen share. There we go. So I can see all your faces.
While we wait for maybe others to come up with a question, I have one for you, Rachel.
Paul has a question.
Oh.
Yes, I do. This is eye-opening. So thank you so much for covering this content. I know we've talked a lot about managers or leaders vis-a-vis their teams. How can you apply this to suppliers and other people you have relationships with outside the organization?
Yeah, so they're a little harder because usually you don't know them as well. But always, most people are team driven. So they're on that team driven side. And most people are on the order tolerant side. So you cannot go wrong with too much communication and too much of a plan. In fact, if you called people and said, because that's part of our challenge too, right? Is if you have people dependencies, you're dependent on them, or if you have people dependent on you, then everyone's gonna have to reproject manage this whole thing, right? Because all the suppliers are changing, the quickness of your delivery is changing. So having those conversations early and often is really important, and as much as possible. And what you're gonna find out is some people who, on the order tolerant side, they might respond best to, hey, this is the plan I think will work. What do you think? Why don't you get back to me tomorrow or the next day? Because those of us who are chaotic, we want to create, be flexible, like, hey, there's so many unknowns, we can't have a plan, we'll just figure it out. Or we want to co-create a solution. But stabilizers really don't like that feels very chaotic. They don't like conflict. And so they're afraid they're going to not make somebody not happy. They're the people that are always like wanting everyone to be okay. They're the ones that have the potlucks, make sure everyone's is cool. So what I would recommend is create a plan that works for you, that takes into consideration whatever they're dealing with, and then float that out as a plan, knowing that might not work or they might have other ideas. But more communication, call them. Like immediately last week, I called all of my lenders. I have one business loan, and I just said, hey, I don't know what this is going to happen. Can we talk about deferment or smaller payments and that kind of stuff? And they worked with me on that. And so definitely just be calling them and talking about, I think everyone is okay right now to be like, hey, this is a mess, and everyone's in a mess. So more communication and more planning. Everybody needs more of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, let's see. We have some chat questions here. Do you find people fall neatly into quads, or would you need multiple strategies for people who overlap?
That was me.
Yep.
That was me.
Yeah, thank you. People are complicated, right? And this is definitely not everyone there. And the other thing I should say is there are rock stars and there are poor performers in every area. There are so many, we need everybody. And so we really try to stay away from one is better than the other. It's really about strategies and how to leverage their gifts for your team. So that's really important to understand. And mostly, even though people are getting close to the line, we find that if they're above that line, they are truly more chaotic than the people below that line. And the people below that line really need more structure. And so even though you can be close, we really see that as kind of anchoring. So Adriana asks, Adriana Banana, right? Adriana. Hi, Rachel. In trying to be fair to your teams, how do you encourage individuals to let you know their preference? They have no idea. I'm telling you, no idea. They don't. They don't have any idea what they need. They are just not happy. All of us are processing all of the stuff going on at the national level, at our community level, on our teams. People don't know. So it's really important. That's what the nice thing about the free assessment that you can use, at least gives you some sense. But people are in the middle of this now, and it's sometimes harder to figure out where they naturally fall. So I would use your best judgment would be my advice. Now, I know, Adriana, you work with bigger teams, and so that's hard, because then if you have 100 people, trying to pin everybody is more difficult. If you have a bigger team, what normally happens is if you have an entrepreneurial team, then you're going to have mostly chaos people. Because what happens is, if you think of SpaceX versus NASA, to throw back to my aerospace background, NASA, you're going to have a federal job, you're going to get good benefits, you're going to have a job, there's no risk as far as the missions. They don't have any tolerance for risk. So if you are an order tolerant software engineer that is in aerospace, you're going to work for NASA. If you want crazy launching cars into outer space, you're going to go work for SpaceX. You want to work for Elon because he's crazy and you love that. And so if one thing you can do if you have a bigger team is that you can kind of look at, where does my organization fit into those boxes? Are we chaotic? Are we startup-y? Are we uncertain? Or most of because people, you will not very rarely attract people that aren't like your company. So it's one of the challenges of entrepreneurial companies, is that we have a lot of chaos people, not so many order tolerant people. So, so you can then make kind of decisions for everybody based on where you think your company sits. So if you think most of your people are fixers or independents, then you can make some decisions based on that. Like the one company I had with the project manager was the fixer and the CEO was independent. All of his people were chaos driven, but most of them were team driven. And so, because most people are. So if I were you, if you're in an entrepreneurial company, focus on that fixer category, more video conferences, and be talking to each other all the time. having that team environment. If you come from a more maybe financial services or legal services or some of that stuff where you're going to attract more order tolerant people, then default down to the stabilizer side, which is more planning and more people time. So I guess that's a way to do it if you work with bigger teams or if you're embedded in some of those bigger teams. Let's see. How would you recommend handling someone who seems unaware of the team's needs despite the team's efforts? Yes. For instance, thinking that now we are working from home, we have less work to do. So that person is self-driven. I promise you. This is a complaint always with self-driven people. My business partner, my co-founder, self-driven. She doesn't give a shit about everybody else. Honestly, I mean, don't get me wrong. She understands intellectually what the need of team and growing things together and we're all in it together, all that. She totally gets it intellectually. But deep down, if it push comes to shove, she's doing what she needs to do. Everyone else will figure out what they need to do. And so this is the hard thing. So the independent is, so this is the hard part about this crazy situation. They are either a stabilizer who is like in this denial phase. And so they're like, well, I don't need to work with you guys because I don't understand what's happening there. I'm going to go work at home. I'm going to go focus on my home people, right? Or they're independents who are crazy chaotic. So you kind of have to reverse to before this happened. Were they more, I need a plan. I'm very order tolerant. I'm very structured. Or were they kind of crazy? Squirrel and chasing new ideas all the time. So if my guess, well, they might be a stabilizer. And so it depends. So that's why you have to look through the behavior into, oh, they're squirrel chasing. Got it. So you have to look through the behavior into what's at the root cause. So they're squirrel chasing. So what I would do, Allison, is I would give them, if you can, a project beyond what their normal projects are. And frankly, this might give you some insight into how much they've been working in the office. Right? So if you can, work with that person on something specific that they should be doing that is trackable. You can understand exactly what they're doing and how, because their tendency is to just disappear. Like if you live in a mountain area, they're going to go skiing instead of working at home, right? Because they figure they'll just get the job done when they can. So be cleared with them about the critical work they have to be doing, and so maybe give them a little more, like emphasize a little more structure into what they need to do, because otherwise you're going to lose them. And they are self-driven. So what they're going to say is, I don't care what everyone else is doing. This is what I need to do for me. And so that can be squirrely. And so the more contact you have with them, at least touch points, the better. Because like for Meg, my co-founder, if she disappears, if we aren't connected, like if I go on a travel tear for 3 weeks and I'm not in the office, we could actually get quite at odds very quickly, because you have to keep them focused on what the mission, what the goal is, what the mission is, why is important. They're going to think they're working harder than anyone else, even though they're only working half the time. So it is twitchy to try to keep them on track. But giving them a specific goal that they can work on and a deadline will help a lot. And so and then if they don't hit it, then you have the decision, are they right for your team, right? Which sucks. If people aren't willing to, and give them a couple weeks, like entrepreneurs, we're ready to like be done, change. If this isn't going to work, we're off to the next thing. I would say give people 2 to 3 weeks to settle in. And if they're not meeting their commitments and all that stuff, then you have to have hard conversations about maybe you're not right for this team. If you feel like you're not working, like if you don't feel like you have enough work to do, I'm happy to give you more work, right? Like, so start figuring out the structures where people can work in. And if they don't seem to be able to step up, the next step is, okay, well, we're gonna have to do something drastic here. Or, hey, let's keep working on this. So try to be as flexible as you can, as long as you can. But at the end of the day, if the revenue's not coming in and everyone's worried about their bottom line, then it's hard to justify keeping somebody that's not going to pull their weight. And so it's a really hard, there's no getting around how hard the time is right now. So be as patient as you can, as long as you can, but you have to give people the structure they need to thrive. Otherwise, no one's going to do very well. So.
Thank you for that response, Rachel.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question for you. What if you do if someone like that is in the top leadership position of your
Yeah, there's not, and you're not in the top leadership position?
correct?
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks. Well, I guess the hardest part, frankly, about that is that as a leader or as a higher level leadership role, you are going to, it's very hard to actually get things done and feel valued. And frankly, I see you're at the university, and I don't know anything about your university, but it's very hard right now because everyone's trying to transition to online and all of that nonsense. To have somebody say that it's less work is it ridiculous. They have never done online teaching. And so what might really be helpful for that person, and somebody, maybe you get a couple people together, is to outline or work with your direct supervisor and see if you can feed the stuff up the hill here, is to actually list out how much more work it is. So, hey, now instead of having conversations in my classroom, I have to have everyone write things, and then I have to read through them myself, and then I have to give feedback, which is 10 times as much work as just having a classroom conversation. And so I think that would really help to say, listen, this is now what we're doing. For this class, I have 25 people. I used to have an hour conversation. Now I have 7 hours of work because I need them to express themselves in written form instead of verbal form or whatever. So that can really help, because a lot of times, especially leaders way up high that have probably never done the thing you're doing, they don't understand. They just don't. And so when they say those things, it's out of ignorance and not out of being a jackass, even though it feels like that. So I would provide more data. I mean, that can't hurt, right? To say, listen, this is actually how much time I'm spending now on this one class, and I have 3 classes this semester. So I'm actually working 70 hours this week instead of my normal 55. And I think that would really help, because what we encourage in like a project management environment is that all transparency about what you're doing. So what you're asking me to do, I'm going to say yes to that. I want you to know how much that work is for me and my team. So I think trying to translate that, or finding resources online that say that already, then it's not personal. Then you can say, listen, it's actually 30% more work to teach online.
Great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the question. Let's see. How do you help team members that want to be productive and want to help the team, but are struggling to manage young children? Oh man, this is tough. Really so I worked as a federal employee. The rule was you could not work from home if you had children at home, because you cannot do both. So it's really hard. What I would do in that situation is be clear with that person what are the most critical things that they need to be working on, and know that they will not be able to work their full day. They just won't. And so what are the most critical things that you need them to be focused on? That's really the key for them. Because if they get 6 hours between when the kids go to bed at 7 and midnight or 1 o'clock, what do you want them to be working on? Or if they get to grab 2 hours of nap time, what do you want them to be working on? That is really the best way to do it. You cannot, no matter how bad it sucks and it's frustrating, they cannot work full time. They just won't be able to. And if they do, their work will not be to the level that it was before, because that's too much distraction. So that is a reality that's unfortunate for this situation that we can't really change.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what we're facing. I just wanted to make sure I was in line with what I thought.
Sure. Yeah, I know. And you know, what might be for them is to create a plan and say, hey, how many hours do you think you can really focus and get work done? Can you do 2 hours before the kids get up and 4 hours at night? I mean, what do you really think you can pull off? And be really transparent about it, and then figure out how to create a program that works for them. Another thing that I do is I give them permission to like have their kids in the background while I'm on a video call. And that might seem obvious, but that isn't obvious to everybody. So, you know, kind of figure out what your rules are about some of those things. It's tough. It's tough. Thank you for the thinking about it, because I think a lot of people aren't thinking about it. All right. Any ideas about how to effectively performance reviews? Just don't do it. I would just set it on, pause it and say, hey, performance reviews, we're going to wait. Make notes. So my co-founder is an HR person. She would tell me, make all the notes you want to make about that person's performance now, so that in 3 months, when you have everyone's back and you have time to sit down, that you don't forget what happened before. So make some notes and be ready. Do not do performance reviews over the phone. They need to be done in person. So I would wait to do it. Now, if they're waiting on raises for performance reviews, that's trickier. But what you could maybe do, if there's a raise in there, you could say, we're going to hold everything, and we're going to, if raises happen when we all get back and we have performance reviews, and we'll make them retroactive so they get the money. But because I just don't think you can do that right now. I just don't think that's fair to anybody, you included, frankly. Now, if you want to fire somebody and you need a performance review to do that, that's a different story. We can talk about that sometime, some other time. Thank you. Anything, complete effective performance reviews? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Office, yeah. I'll also put in, let's say, I don't know if I can give everybody the link. I can't share. Oh yeah, to everybody, there it is. I'll also send you.
Drop it in there.
Yeah, I had it. Adriana had sent me a private thing, and so I had to get it off that. So I'm just going to send you the URL to our website, and our concepts page has a lot more about this. So if you're super nerdy about it and you want to read more, it also has a link to if you want to buy the book and all that stuff. But really, the concepts page has a lot more stuff on it that I think if you're nerding out about it, then it might be interesting for you to check out. It also has the link to that assessment. Let's see. Did I miss anybody? Anyone have any final questions? We're at top of the hour, so thank you. All right, and I am sitting around. I'm usually literally on travel 50% of the time. Clearly not right now. So come on over. If you want to reach out and have a private conversation or a private chat, video chat, I'm on Zoom pretty much all the time. So I would love to connect more with you and talk through stuff and all that. It's just what we're excited about doing right now. So